Okay, we're up to Zion Amid Aleph at the top. Just to reintroduce the topic. The Gemara said a very interesting shaila. In other words, the reason why we separate the 7 days was a neither problem. That Shema nimtza suffix neither, boil neither would be bad. Bitame for 7 days like a neither. That was the reason for the 7 days. The Gemara said, "Why aren't we?" That's what we separated me basically. Shivas Yom Koidim Yom Kippur, Mafrishnas Kohen Gadol May Beisai Zawishta. Okay. The Gemara then said, "We got another 7-day problem. Why aren't we worried about the people who are coming to see him? Somebody may just die when he comes in. If he dies, he's going to come in for 7 days, and he'll miss Yom Kippur. Why aren't we worried about that? Because people are coming in and out. In other words, we should put him really in solitary confinement." In fact, we know for sure that there are at least 2 people who are going to see him and teach him all the halachas because we want to be but being into Keteris and outside, inside. Remember this? So we weren't worried about that. So the Gemara gave 2 answers. One answer was that Tumah is Hutra B'tziba. When it comes to Tumas Mace, and only Tumas Mace, it's Hutra B'tziba. Meaning, if the guy would die, Machnish Tais, he died, he's dead. It's still Tahar. Even though he's dead, Tumah is Hutra B'tziba. That was the opinion of Rava. That Tumah is Hutra B'tziba. That was one teretz. And therefore, if he, in fact he does walk in and dies, we don't have to worry. Ravina said, no, Tumah is not Hutra B'tziba. Tumah is Hutcha B'tziba. Tumah is a b'di'evet, meaning there's Tumah there, but if I have no other choice, I can go ahead and do it. If I have no other choice, I can go ahead and do it. And so why aren't you Geisa? Because by Tumah, Nida is Shchiach, more so, but for a person to die, punkt at that time is Loi Shchiach. Milsad Loi Shchicha, Loi Gaz B'Rabban, and therefore we weren't worried about Tumah. The Gemara then introduces the machlokes between Rav Nachman and Rav Sheshes as to whether Tumah is Hutra B'tziba or Tumah is Hutra B'tziba. Rav Nachman holds Tumah is Hutra B'tziba, meaning there is no Tumah by Karban Siba. It doesn't exist. It doesn't exist. Rav Sheshes says, of course it exists. But if I can't go ahead and find a Kohen who's Tahar, then he could do it when Roy V'Kahanim Atame. There were 2 opinions as to what Rav Nachman holds. What in the base of that's working, Parsha the people are what are Tameh and Parsha Tahar. We're saying he's Moida, you would go after the Tahar. That was a bit of a chiddush because if Tumah switch with Sibor, there's no chilik between what the Tameh and the Tahar. So I spoke out of Gvuras Ari yesterday that it's a din Rabbanan. That is a din Rabbanan. If Tumah switch with Sibor, there's no such thing as Tahar and Tameh. It's all the same. So it's only the Rabbanon you'd have to say that you go after the Tahar. Another opinion, the Ikadi Ami was, even if you have in a base Av, you have someone who's Tameh and someone's Tahar, it doesn't make a difference who does the Avodah because Tumah is Hutra B'tziba. Okay? Rav Sheshes on the other hand said Tumah is Hutra B'tziba. Now, where do we get into this all this? Where's the first time we all know it? It was by Pesach Sheni. The pasuk says, Ish kiyeh Tameh l'nefesh, Ish kiyeh Tameh l'nefesh, then what? Yaseh Pesach Sheni. An ish goes to Pesach Sheni, but let's say that Tzibas Tamei Tumas Mace, they're not going to go to Pesach Sheni, correct? That we hacked down Pesachim a good few block. Good. So you see that what Tumah is, well, again, Hutra or Hutcha, what it is. So Shesha says it's Hutcha. Says the Gemara. So we're going to get into the whole or a digression, tangential discussion of Tumah, the din of Tumah, whether it's Hutcha B'tziba or Hutra B'tziba. Actually, do you have your hand up or you touched the wrong thing? Okay, I'll assume that it was a mistake. Rav Sheshes says Rav Sheshes, Zayin Amid Aleph. Today's daf is Zayin with 2 lines from the top. Okay. Rav Sheshes, Me'amin. How do I know this? That Tumah is Hutcha B'tziba. That there is Tumah there, and b'di'eved it's Docha. The Tanya. Haya Oymiru Makriv Minchas Oymer. If a person is standing, the Kohen is standing, and he's being Makriv the Korban Mincha. We know the Minchas Oymed, that's Boran Tezayin Nisan. Mat is the Chodesh in the Medina, and it comes from Sa'irim. You do Kemitza, and you have leftover, which is called Shirayim. V'nit Ma'as Biyadoi, and the Korban Mincha is Tamei in his hands. Guys, outside. If Tumas Hutra B'tziba, what would the din be? No sweat, right? 0. You don't have to do anything, correct? If you have to do something like replace it, What's that a raya? That tumah is not hutra, tumah is hudcha. Meaning, hudcha means pushed away if I can't do it b'taira. But if I could do it b'taira, I do it b'taira. So I'm a kain is being Isaac in this carbon mincha, and in the nas biyada, it comes tummy in his hands. Why do we say mevi and acheres tachteha? You go ahead and you bring another one in its place. From ein sham elahi, and if all you have, in fact, is that mincha, we say that the kain havi bikeach, be smart, vishasak, and be quiet and don't say anything. So why do you see ketanim miyas? Nonetheless, we learn. Oimer umevi acheres tachteha. You bring another one there. You bring another one with it. So why do you see that tumah must be hudcha? Because if it was hutra, the tamei carbon is fine. Elo you have a raya to hudcha. That's the raya to Rav Sheshes and a kasha on Rav Nachman who says tumah is hutra. Amar Rav Nachman says Rav Nachman modina amoida heicha de ikashirayim, where you have shirayim la'achila. Most karbanis tzibur, a carbon mincha of tzibur is burnt totally. There's nothing left to eat. But in fact, fellas, the carbon mincha, you take a kaimitz, you burn it, and you have left over to eat. Says Rav Nachman, when do I say toima hutra b'tziba? When there's nothing left. If in fact there's going to be food that's left over, shirayim, that in that scenario, I'd be moida that tumah is not, you should go ahead and replace it, where there's something to eat. Says Rashi 4 lines down, modina heicha de ikar shirayim lachila, the afal gav, the carbon siba, karev betuma, even though you can bring a betuma, ain't a nechal betuma. It's not eaten betuma. Kedamina meketz etzolim, with the exception of the carbon pesach. Umincha hanikmetzes, by a mincha that is, you take a kamitza rather than totally burnt, modina, I admit, dim hadrinan, I try last place betaira to do one correctly, sheyu shirayim nechalim, that the shirayim should be what nechalim. So Rashi gives us a bit of an insight. We said even if tum is hutra b'tzibah, that's only to make the carbon accepted. You can't eat it, with one exception. The carbon pesach, we spoke out barichas. The whole purpose of the carbon pesach is to be eaten, right? You might remember this. That the carbon pesach, if you don't remember it, it's okay. You're in good company. But I'm saying, other people might remember it. The whole purpose of carbon pesach is to be eaten. So even though tumah by other carbonis is muta, that you don't have to bring another carbon, you can't eat it. Good, you can't eat it. So that's by carbon pesach you could. So says Rav Nachman, 1 second. I'm bringing a carbon. I have a possibility of what? Of doing it. Okay, it'll be a good carbon, but I have a possibility of doing it that I could eat it. Go ahead and do it that you could eat it. So I'll replace the tamei dika one, not so much to make the carbon pesach, the carbon mincha accepted. It'll be accepted anyway. But I'll do it. Why? In order to facilitate the achil of the shirayim, which would not have been accepted in the tamei dika one, because tumah would not matter to the extent to allow achila. So that would be permitted. Okay, very good shmak. Okay, I'd like to. This is not according to the Rambam; it's according to my way of thinking. the two components, in order for it to go ahead and be muta, it has to be 1, a carbon sibur, 2, it has to be kaveh zman. Carbon sibur, kaveh zman. It has to have one of those aspects. Let's see inside, but those two things, that it's a carbon sibur and it's kaveh zman. So now, Rav Nachman said his answer. Meisivei, we're going to ask again on Rav Nachman. Hoyamakriv minchas porim ve'elim ukvasim. He's being makriv. Minchas of porim elim ukvasim. Guys, havamina, these are all karbanis tzibur. And the carbon mincha that accompanies them is a carbon minchas nesachim. There is no shirayim tomato, of course it's totally burnt. There's no shirayim, there's no achila over here. Good? Now, v'nitmas biyadai, and these carbon minchas become tamei. Oimer umevian acheres tachteha, you replace it. V'im ein sham elahi, oimer loy tell the kohen, havi pikeach v'shosik. My love, porim elim kvasim dechag, is not speaking about the bulls, the rams, the sheep that we bring on Sukkos. that which are karbanis tzibur, correct? Karbanis tzibur. Tuma is what? Hutra b'tzibur. So why do I have to replace the carbon mincha? And you can't give me a teretz that what? That tamata the shirayim, because if it's the carbon mincha the sachim, there is no shirayim. It's totally burnt. So now we got Rav Nachman's got a problem. It's mashma from here. Tuma is only hutcha b'tziba, only b'di'eved. Because why? We're replacing it if we can. Rav Nachman says no. Your presentation is incorrect. It's not speaking about the mincha that accompanies the parim of a chag, elam of a chag, or kvasim of a chag. No, what's it speaking about? Rav Nachman, loy parim, par avodah zara. Don't say it's the parim of the chag, but it's the par of avodah zara. There's a very fascinating halacha. Okay, let's digress. It's going to be an early share, so I might as well take you off in a tangential sunset. Not too long ago, you were Mavis Sedra, you got Tevayikra Dalit, you read it, and you did what we all do. You continued on, and you assumed that you knew what you're talking about. There are kabbanas there that are not your typical kabbanas. One is called the Par Helam Dava Shel Tzibor. One is called the Par Kohen Mashiach. There's another one called the Par Avodah Zarah. These are unique kabbanas. This is if Bezdin blows it. If Bezdin goes ahead and tells people that you can go ahead and do a Chiyav Karis, then they have to bring a Par Helam Dava. The matter was hidden mitzibor. It's a unique carbon because two things. One, you sprinkle the dam on the Mizbeach HaZahav, on the golden Mizbeach. You sprinkle it in front of the Al Moed, and the par is burnt chutz l'machne. This is all Vayikra Dalet. There's a par, if the tzibur is told to do avodah zara, that's, you bring a par, it's a chatas for avodah zara. You bring a par for avodah zara. So now, if this par for avodah zara is brought, right, if this par for avodah zara is brought, in that case, it's not going to be of its tzibur. It's going to be, well, again, since it's of its tzibur, right? It's burnt, so it's not a part of its tzibur that's kaveh zman. It's not. Remember, what's my rule of thumb? The rule of thumb: you need two things. You need to be carbon tzibur, and it has to be kaveh zman. So kavu zman for this carbon, right? It's an anomaly of anomalies that they matter avodah zara. Good. So therefore, your kasha is not a kasha, because we're not speaking about a carbon that's chutra b'tzibur. Why? Because what's the two formulas you need? It fills one of the boxes, right? It fills one of the boxes. What? That it is a carbon that is bought for a tzibur, but it doesn't fill the other one. Why? Because it's not kaveh zman. You need two things. You need that it's what tzibur and kaveh zman. So that would take care of that. Now, so afagav the tzibuhu, kivin the loy kaveh zman. There you got guys got it inside. Even though it's a carbon tzibur, since it's not kaveh zman, mehadrinan will go after a kosher one. So therefore, it's not shver to me of Nachman. Secondly, elim. Again, you have to answer up three cases. You have to be in the minchas parim, minchas elim, minchas kvasim. Elim is be'eloi shel Aaron. We're speaking about the Isle of Aaron. The Isle of Aaron, which would be the carbon of a yachid, guys. Guys, it would be the carbon of a yachid. Carbon of a yachid is not hutter b'tzibor. It's not the carbon of its tzibor. It's not the carbon of its tzibor. It's Isle shel Aaron. It's his own money. It's not the carbon of its tzibor. So the El shel Aaron. In addition, guys, right, and therefore, so since what's the rule of thumb? It's got to be carbon tzibor, and it's got to be what? It's got to be kaveh zman. So this is kaveh zman. You're going to bring it every what? Every Yom Kippur, but it's not what? It's not shel tzibor. Next, the afagav the kafilei zman, kivin the yachid hu mehadrinan. Since so it's geschmack, right? With that akdom, it fits the box. It's fitting good, right?
Even though he's bringing it to his own, but he's doing it on behalf of the tzibur. It's still not.
Again, that's the par. That's the par. In other words, I said yesterday, if the Aaron's par is considered of the tzibur, why? Because he can't bring the other kabbanas. The par is a chatas. He can't get the kapara. This is an oila. The par is a chatas. A chatas is he has to get his own kapara before he can mechapa for Kal Yisrael. In addition, a chatas doesn't have any nesachim with it. We'll see. We're going to see it. We'll see the Gemara. But I'm saying that that's why the ayal over here is not going to impede Yankel the future kabbanas, because really that power also is of a yachid. But since we spoke about yesterday in Shir, since the other kabbanas are contingent upon it as a lach of a kabban v'tzibur, we said that yesterday. Geshmak, kvasim, sheep, b'keves haba ima oimer. We're speaking about the keves that comes with the oimer. De'ek shirayim, that there's shirayim la'achila. Menei tuma is what. So again, the three things you need: one, it has to be tzibur; two, it has to be kaveh zman; and three, can't be any shirayim. That's it. So far, Rav Nachman Elser. Everyone's good? Good? A lot of ideas, but Geshmak, lum the charade. Those three things, everything gets you through everything. Meisivei. Okay. There's Aaron wore at tzitz. We had this in Masechet Pesachim. The tzitz had the capacity to go ahead and be maratza. If you did something, if something went wrong, then the tzitz was maratza tumah. Now, if tumah is hutru b'tzibur, do you need the tzitz? No. Again, guys, tumah hutru b'tzibur means it doesn't say tumah by the tzibur. So the tzitz really you only need for yechidim. So if I show you that the tzitz is maratza by the tzibur, it must be because tumah is what is hutru b'tzibur, meaning it's there and I have to correct it. So that's going to be that problem now. That's going to be the next problem. Says the Gemara, Meisivei, dam shenitma, dam that became tamei, v'zarku, b'shoigeg. If the kohen did it b'shoigeg, hurtza, then it'll be marutza. The tzitz will be maratza. It'll make it accepted. B'mezid, loy hurtza. Not because the tzitz doesn't work, but because konsu rabbanan. Right, Rabbanan made a kanas if he did it b'mezid. He made a kanas. So now, once you need the tzitz to be maratza, obviously it must be tumah is hutcha. Because if tumah is hutra, you don't need the tzitz. So what's the obvious answer? This is speaking about the carbon of yachid. When is the tzitz maratza? It's only the carbon of a tzibur, right? Same for the Gemara, the obvious answer. Ki tanya hahi. When did we learn this? That the tzitz is maratza. Ki tanya hi di yachid. We learned about it. We learned it by what that of a yachid. We learned it by that of a yachid. Toshma, and now Amad tzitz maratza. What does the tzitz make accepted? Al hadam, the al habasa, the al hachelev, shenitma, that became tamei, bein b'shoigeg, bein b'mezid, bein b'oinis, bein b'ratzin. Rashi speaks out that oinis and mezid are synonymous. Mezid being the inverse of shogeg, and onus being the and ratzon being the inverse of onus. Bein b'yachid, bein b'tzibur. Guys, how did I do? Bein b'tzibur. What does that mean? The tzitz is maratza. Bein b'yachid, bein b'tzibur. 1 second. If tum is hutra b'tzibur, you don't need the tzitz to be maratza for what? For the carbon of a tzibur, correct? Elis the kashan of Nachman. Okay. V'isakadaitach tuma heta. He b'tzibur. It's very good. I tell you, it's like the antithesis of Shkolim. Shkolim, where everything was very short, and I didn't know if I was coming or going here. It's very humor. It's like it's a geschmack. They give you a little more words. Like you all would have gotten the kasha right then if we would have stopped. But the Gemara gives it to you anyway, right? Says the Gemara, "V'isakadaita tomahut hetahi b'tzibur lamalila ritzuye." Why do you need it tzitz maratza? And it must be tomavad is chutcha b'tzibur. Guys, you all good? It's geschmack, yeah. So Amalei Rav Nachman says Rav Nachman who tells Tumas Hutch B'tzibur, Ki Ketani Hatzitz Maratza. When do we say that tzitz is maratza? It's not going back on the clauses tzibur and yachid. Ad the yachid, it's only going back on the clause of the yachid. So when it says Alma Hatzitz Maratza and it says yachid and tzibur, it's not going back on the tzibur. It's going back on the clause, the statement of yachid, because in fact the tzibur does not need the tzitz maratza since tum is hurtza b'tziba. Liba is saying another teretz. Afilu tema b'tziba. Guys, v'geshmach. Guys, outside. What's the rule of thumb? When is tum hurtza b'tziba? What are the two things you need? It needs tzibur, amad, and okay. What about it's a tzibur that's not kaveh zman? Tzibur, but not. It doesn't. You don't check the box of zman. Then you would need. Then you would need what? You would need the tzitz. Oh, that's next teretz. People say ma afilu tema bit tzibur bahanich like filas man. The covenant tzibur that what that you weren't kaveh zman. Those that they weren't kaveh zman, right? Then and those that you needed system ratza. So far, Rav Nachman is held very starkly. His shita tuma could be hortz betzibur, and we would need a tzitz for the yachid. We would need for the tzitz for a carbon tzibur that wasn't kaveh zman. Because what's our rule of thumb? Again, not like the Rambam. Our rule of thumb is what? Is you need two boxes checked off. You need to check off the box of what of tzibur and of kaveh zman. But that formula, the Gemara's geshmak is anything. Mesavei. Now it says by this is the tzitz. Here's what it says. V'nasa Aaron es avoin hakotshim. Aaron will literally carry. What it means, he cause forgiveness of the oven of kotshim, of the aveira that's associated with kotshim. Which aveira does he get forgiveness for? Im oven pigol. If it's the oven of pigol, harik fanema lo yerotze. Guys, pigol. In a the avoida, one of the four avoidas Adam, be it in the shchita, the halacha, the kabbalah, or the zrika of the dam, you have in mind to do it chutz l'zman for another time. That creates a din in the carbon. The carbon's no good, and anyone who eats that carbon will be chayav kares. What about if you have the same machshava with the machshava of chutz l'zman, a chutz l'makoim, a different place? Then we call it pigel, but it doesn't have a chayav kares, but it won't be good. So in those cases. It's not, in other words, it's not accepted. It's not a good carbon. It's not in Yiddish. It's not this Kaddish kind of villing, right? It's not accepted. The im oven nicer, if the oven of nicer, right? Harik fanemer le'chashev. Again, one is chutz l'makam, one is chutz l'zman. That's the way Rashi learns. Amid beis. Ha'ena nicer. It only causes forgiveness. Ella al ovain tuma shehutra mechlal hatzbitzibor. It only goes ahead and causes forgiveness. What is the tzitz meratz on? On tuma. Ella ovain tuma shehutra. Tuma that was hutra. Mechlala bitzibor. That it's all written together. Ovain tuma shehutra mechlala bitzibor. This statement clearly states that tuma is hutra b'tzibur. In other words, without any lumdis, guys, look at the words. It's noiseya, it causes forgiveness. El al oven tuma hutra mechal tzibur. Let's see the way Rashi learns. Top Rashi. Ha'ena noisa haloshen me'atahu. This ha'ena means loshen me'ata. Me'ata. After it can't be pigol on zman. After it can't be pigol on noiser, right? It can't be that. Pigol and nicer, right? So the lashon ha'en is me'ata hu me'ata iyata ma'itza she'inoise can only cause forgiveness. Ella al oven carbon tuma, a carbon that was brought betuma. Umay shna de shadin le'lekula. Why do we go ahead and say the carbon brought betuma is tahar? Hoyel umetzina ba kal acha shehutra l'tziba mechlal. Perish, guys, look at me. Everyone, look at me. It's not pshat that the tzitz causes the heta b'tzibur. If it's heta b'tzibur, you don't need the tzitz. Meaning, what the tzitz does, if a carbon of a yachid is brought b'tuma, it causes it to be accepted. Why do we go ahead and apply the heter of the tzitz to tuma rather than the other ones? Besides the fact the other one says they're not accepted, is because we find in the genre of tuma a heter. We find in the tuma category a heter. Where's that category? Bitzibur. Tumis meis bitzibur is mutta. Memela, since we find tumis meis bitzibur is mutta, in other words, we find the kula. It exists in the tzibur welt. Such an idea that tumis hucha bitzibur mechlal. If tuma be yechidus, the tzitz will be maratza on it. The tzitz will work on it. Why? Because we find the heter b'tziba. All we care about is one line. Tuma hutra b'tziba, like Rav Nachman, not like Rav Sheshes. But that's shot in the words. You want to know why the tzitz is maratza on tumah of a yachid or of a tzibur that's not kaveh zman, because since we find tumah hutra b'tzibur by what? By kaveh zman of a tzibur, memela, we see the Torah is mekel, memela, I'll say that tzitz is maratza too. But what's the bottom line? You underline the words. It says over there, Avoin Tuma Shahutru Mechlala B'Tziba. Clearly, Tuma, like Rav Nachman stated openly, Tuma is Hutru B'Tziba. Guys, you hear the way I'm learning? You hear the way you learn Pshat in these words over here. Okay. And for the Gemara, V'Koshel Rav Sheshes is in trouble. Tanoihi. If Sheshes finds a Tana who goes according to him, we're good. If Sheshes finds a Tana who goes according to him, we're good. Where is that Tana? Tanoi, the Tanya. Sits. Now, this has nothing to do whether it sits as maratza or not. The question is, when, at which point is it maratza? It says, V'nasa aranas oven akotshim. So the pasuk says, I mean, shmos chavchas. You have a shmos here? Right. It must be just. Oh, but yeah. No, he's gonna. He got up ready. He got up ready. Huh? No, there are plenty of svarim out. There's always plenty of svarim around, just never the ones you need. Okay, guys, listen to this pasuk. It's Shmos Chavches Lamed Ches. Shmos Chavches Lamed Ches. V'hoya al mitzach Aaron, the tzitz will be on the forehead of Aaron. V'nasa Aaron is oven hakotshim. Aaron will carry, he'll cause forgiveness of the oven hakotshim we just said. Asher yakdushu b'nei Yisrael l'chol matnas kotshayim. V'hoya, here's the key words. V'hoya al mitzchay tamid. It should be on his metzach, on his forehead, tamid, all the time. L'rotzon lahem b'fnei Hashem. So the trup we read is the following. Stop. So, and we go, so the word between Tom and L'Ratzon, we're going to go ahead and make a half sukkah. Good? So now, let's see the two ways to read this pasuk. And this is going to be in the machlokas between Rav Sheshes and Rav Nachman. That's going to be machlokas Tanoim. 2 lines from the top, Zion on the base. Rav Sheshes Tanoim, the Tanya, sits, whether it's on Aaron's forehead, on the Kohen Gadol's forehead, whether it's not on his forehead, miratza, it causes forgiveness. It causes the carbon to be accepted. Divrei Reb Shimon. Rabbi Yehuda says no. As long as it's on his forehead, miratza, it causes the carbon to be accepted. If it's not on his forehead, miratza, it's not. Amalei Reb Shimon says Reb Shimon, Kohen Gadol be Yom Kippur. Reb Shimon says it doesn't have to be on his forehead. Kohen Gadol be Yom Kippur yochiach. The Kohen Gadol Yom Kippur will prove to you that it doesn't have to be on the forehead. It's not on his forehead, and nonetheless, it causes acceptance. Now, on Yom Kippur, guys, he wears the Shemona Begadim sometimes, but when it's when he's doing the avodah unique to Yom Kippur, he doesn't. He's only wearing what? He's only wearing white. He can't walk with gold because Hashem will remember the egel. So what do you see? The Nezer Kodesh, guys, the tzitz was made of pure gold. So he obviously he's not wearing it the whole time, and nonetheless it's being ratza. So that's what Shimon's raya that what doesn't have to wear it all the time.
When the carbon outside, the carbon was done with the carbon was brought when it was on, probably, no?
No.
When he was in the Kodesh Kedoshim, right? He wasn't makriv, it was makriv outside the Kodesh Kedoshim, right?
It doesn't make a difference. He's not wearing it all the time, Yaakov. He's not wearing it all the time. So Amar lo Rabbi Yehuda, Hanech l'koyin gadol b'yom kippur shetumo chutzhu lo b'tziba. What are you bringing? Says Rabbi Yehuda. You're bringing a raya from the Kohen Gadol, guys. Tumah is hutra b'tziba. So what? If tumah is hutra b'tziba, what? You don't need the tzitz. You don't need the tzitz. That's a raya. So mechlal, the Rav Shimon who does bring a raya from there must hold what? Sava tumah duchuyahi b'tziba. So it must be that what? Rav Nachman holds like Rav Yehuda, and Rav Sheshes holds like Rav Shimon. When Rav Shimon asked the question, you see a raya, you don't need to wear it by the fact that it's maratza, even though what? Even though what he's not wearing it, it must be hold that it's Yom Kippur. It must be hold that you need it to be maratza. Why? Because tum is hutcha.
But that's only for the carbon tzibah.
Again, just amalgamate it. Just amalgamate it. It's no question. There's no question. Yeah, but right now that sits, any carbon would be messed up right, it will be accepted.
But it sits for his own personal carbon. He uses it. It's not a value for his own, for the coin's carbon.
We don't, it person,
Put his own carbon first, right?
he's not wearing the tzitz. It's a carbon tzibur. Again, you don't. It's working right now. Right now, if he would mess up that carbon, it would work. If you mess up the carbon right now, it would work. He's not wearing it. That's the raya. That's the raya. There's no one who says he has to wear that because the raya is he's bringing the carbon now, and if it would be messed up, it would work. Says Reb Shimon, it would work. Why? Because it works even off. Why do you need it? Rabbi Yehuda says you don't need it at all, so you have no raya. That's the dialogue in the Gemara. Says the Gemara. Abaya says Abaya. Now we're just going to get into this machloikis of whether we're finished, guys. We're finished with Rav Nachman and finished with Rav Sheshes. That's the sugya. Rav Nachman tumah hutcha b'tzibi, like Rav Yehuda, and Rav Sheshes tumah zvutra, and he holds like Rav Shimon. Now we're just going to get into whether it has to be on him or we're going to go off and on and off, on and off. We're going to go through the sugya of the two shitas over here. Rav Shimon says it has to even off. Rav Yehuda says it has to be on. So again, we're finished basically with the sugya of Tumah Hudra and Hutcha, and now we're just going to get into the sugya of the tzitz itself, whether the tzitz has to be on him or not. So this is the Gemara. Amar Abaya. B'nishbar hatzitz. If the tzitz is broken, the kuli amalei pligi d'lei meratza. Even Reb Shimon would say it doesn't work. It doesn't have to be on it, but it has to be whole. Ki pligi. When do they argue? The tali b'sichsa. If it's hanging on a peg, it's hanging on a hook. It's not being worn. Rabbi Yehuda Savar, it says, "V'hoya al mitzchay." It should be on his mitzchay tamid. It says that the beginning of the pasuk, "V'hoya al metzach Aaron v'nasa Aaron." So the first part of the pasuk says, "Al meitzach v'nasa." That's what it says in the first part of the pasuk. If Shimon Savar, no, look at the last part of the tamid of this pasuk. Tamid l'ratzayin l'fnei Hashem. My tamid. What does tamid mean? If you mean it has to be all the time on him, does that can possibly be on him at all times? Doesn't he have to go to sleep? Elatamid means miratzahu. It's miratza all the time. In other words, if Shimon learns the pasuk when it says tamid l'ratzayin l'fnei Hashem, tamid l'ratzayin, guys, he's a play on words. Tamid all the time l'ratzayin, it will be miratza all the time, even when he's not wearing it. Tamid l'ratzayin l'fnei Hashem, even when he's not wearing it, it'll be miratza. Or Rabbi Yehuda Nami, who says that what? V'nasa al mitzchay, it has to be on his metzach all the time. What does he do with the tamid l'ratzayin? What does he do with that? Yehuda Nami haksiv tamid. Hahu tamid shlo yasiach taitu mimenu. The tamid means that he has to be aware that he's wearing it at all times. Ki the Rabba bar Rav Huna, the Amar Rabba Rav Huna, chayiv adam lamashmesh b'tfilah, if a person's chayiv to touch his tefillin, b'chol shah v'shah. That's the reason they instituted in davening that we go ahead, right? It's right. We touch it. The times we touch it is because that we should have hesach hadas. We should be aware that we're wearing tefillin. Where do you know that? Where do you know this concept that you should have hesach hadas that you're wearing tefillin? We learn what from Kal V'chomer and Mitzitz. Umatzitz she'ein bayela askara achas. It says Kodesh Hashem. It only has one name of Hashem in it. Amar Torah. The Torah says Al mitzchay tamid shelo yasiach taitu mimenu. Tamid meaning that what you should be aware of it all the time. That you shouldn't have hesach hadas, and it only has one mentioning of Hashem's name. Tefillin sheyesh behem askaras harbe. Tefillin that has many mentions of Hashem's names. 21 to be exact, guys. 21 times Hashem's name is mentioned. And your tefillin shel yad and tefillin shel rosh. Alachas kama v'kama, you should not have hesach hadas. So tamid is that for the purpose of hesach hadas, but not that it works all the time. Well, Rav Shimon says it works all the time. Tamid miratza v'kasiv al mitzchay v'nasa. It has to be on his head in order to cause forgiveness, in order to cause ritzui, right? Al mitzchay mashma. It only works the first part of the pasuk when it's on his forehead. Says, how else would you know where to put it? Guys, how else would you know where to put the tzitz? So it has to say al mitzchay, to say you put it on his forehead, but not to say it has to be on there all the time to work. It just has to be on there in that location. For Rabbi Yehuda l'kavei l'makam minalei, where does he know? Nafkalei me al mitzchay. From it says at the end of the pasuk me al mitzchay, and The first part of the pasuk says al metzach, and this is al mitzchay. Rav Shimon nami typically me al mitzchay. The end of the pasuk. Why does he need the first part? And achinami come from the latter part of the pasuk. So therefore, ela al mitzchay v'nasa mayav. What does he do with the first part of the pasuk? Amalach roy lemetzach meratza. If it's roy to go on the forehead, meaning it's not broken, then it's meratza. She'ena roy lemetzach, but if it's not roy lemetzach, then ain't maratza. Even though I hold it doesn't have to be on there all the time, it has to be roy to be on there. And if it's broken, it will not be maratza. Fuki nishbar, to exclude if it's broken, that sits still in maratza. Rabbi Yehuda nishbar tzitz minole. What is Rabbi Yehuda who says I need that to teach me? It has to be there on all the time. Where does he know if the tzitz is broken that it doesn't work? Nafgalei mi metzach. When it could have said metzach mitzchay, guys. When the Gemara says this, it always means when I could have said one thing, but it says another thing. So nafgalei mi metzach. When it could have said metzach, but it doesn't say metzach. It says mitzchay. So therefore, since it uses that lashon, it comes to teach me that it has to be whole. Rav Shimon, what does he do with that limud? Metzach mitzchay loy mashmalei. To him, that it's not mashma. So we end up again just to chazrib the sugya. We started off with the prisha of the Kohen Gadol. The prisha of the Kohen Gadol is for 7 days. Is because of maybe that he's boiled a suffix nida. We'll find out she's a nida and it'll be boiled mafreya me'es la'es. Therefore, by 7 days, we'll assure that he'll be squeaky clean to do the avoid. The Fred Gemara weren't you worried about another type of tumah? Weren't you worried about tumas mates? We gave 2 terutzim. One teretz was tumas hutra b'tzibur, and therefore if he dies, we don't care. Tumas hutra b'tzibur, and therefore it's milsel shchicha, and therefore we weren't goyza. But tumas hutra b'tzibur is machlokes amaroyim and tanoyim. Machlokes between Rav Nachman and Rav Sheshes. Rav Nachman says it's hutra, like the Tana Rabbi Yehuda. And Rav Shesha says it's Utcha, like the Tana Reb Shimon. Thank you all for listening.
Good, thank you.
Right.